So many atheists, so little time. So tonight, I've whacked Simon Dan at least 6 times now because he's a slow learner and he's very zealous.
Please subscribe.
He repeats the evolution party line like it's dogma.
There's an evolution party? Why wasn't I invited?
And people just believe him. He'll say, well, it takes 10,000 years for something to fossilize. Dan, pay attention tonight, okay? No, it doesn't. Stop lying to your people. You're repeating the mantra that you were taught, okay?
No, he doesn't. What he actually does, Kent, is he uses verifiable and confirmed scientific information to prove that pretty much 99.9999999.
Yo, I ain't finished. You don't know what I was going to say. 99.8999999.889 9889
99999999% of what you say is a load of old waffle.
He did a show a couple of days ago about Matt Powell. He said this creationist decides to take on Bill Nye. So let me play some of that tonight with Matt Powell. Here we go. Let's see. Is it this one? I guess it is. And I go this way. There's my mouse over there.
Do you know, I could watch Kent try to figure out how his computer works all day. It's like watching a chimpanzee trying to perform open heart surgery.
Once in a while, I get people that that claim they don't believe in evolution.
Notice, you have to believe in evolution, Bill, and Simon Dan.
Well, that almost never happens, does it? Kent Hovind misrepresenting what somebody else has said. He didn't say that we have to believe in evolution. He said that some people say to him that they don't believe in evolution. But you don't need to believe in something that has got an absolute boatload of evidence which backs it up.
It's not something we can observe or see or test. You believe it happened long ago and far away in the distant past.
Yeah, and that's a very common assertion from people who oppose evolution, but it's demonstrably false. There's a mountain of evidence from many different fields of science that support the theory of evolution. The fossil record. We have a vast collection of fossils that shows the progression of life forms over millions of years. Then there's comparative anatomy, similarities in the bone structures of different animals, like the human arm and a bat's wing, all indicate a common ancestor. Molecular biology, perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from DNA, because by comparing the DNA sequences of different species, we can see how closely related they are.
You don't see it today. I mean, why don't they make life in the laboratory again? That had to happen somewhere in your distant past. Why don't they change an amoeba to an elephant or a whale? Why not? You can't see any of it happening.
Yeah, but that's just because it happens very slowly, Kent, over millions of years, which you know. You just choose to go against what all the evidence demonstrates to us because it disagrees with what you can read in your precious book. And it never fails to make me laugh either. You refuse to believe years and years of scientific evidence which supports evolution, but you're happy to believe one book which was written thousands of years ago, then translated multiple times into multiple different languages just because it says what you believe to be true. That's just confirmation bias, Ken.
Because it's stupid. It's not science. It's a religious belief. Evolution is not science. That's why I don't believe in it. You got some evidence for it, Bill Nye? Contact me, 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3. Come visit Dinosaur Adventureland. You can sit right here and defend your religion. I'll take you on anytime.
Beliefs can be formed without evidence, though, Kent, or even despite evidence to the contrary. For example, someone may believe in ghosts without any personal experience or verifiable evidence. Or someone might believe that a magical man who lives in the clouds created mankind by grabbing a handful of dirt off the ground. But in the real world, we are far more inclined to accept something as a fact when that something can be backed up with compelling evidence. Can you back up anything you claim, Kent?
You couldn't back up a phone,
Really, why not?
Because evolution asserts that we all descended from fish. There is no evidence to support such a claim.
Well, there is actually a lot of evidence. Here's just one piece. Now, DNA sequence comparisons shows that the DNA sequence that controls the formation of human synovial joints is also present in primitive fish.
See, that's what I meant earlier on in the video, Kent, when I said that what Simon Dan does is explain what science can demonstrate. So he isn't just making things up like you do, he's just going back over the evidence that shows us that evolution is a fact.
Maybe there's a common designer behind those two because they need that synovial joint fluid to make the joints grow. On fish, because they have joints too, you know.
You know, for somebody who claims to be a doctor, even though he isn't,
Not a doctor.
you don't half use some really weak, pathetic arguments. All that is the watchmaker argument. Just because something is intricate and difficult to understand, that does not mean that it was made by somebody.
Intellectually, we've certainly degraded. There are people now that don't know that there's only 2 genders, Dan. There are some people they don't know. They're woke. They think, wow, there might be 40 genders. Okay. There's some people who believe that they came from a rock, like you, Dan. I think we've degraded intellectually too, okay?
Well, you definitely have, Kent, and I mean, would it even be a Kent Hovind video without a smidgen of transphobia or homophobia?
Oh yeah, you believe you came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing exploding? We're smarter for sure. That is stupid, Dan. You're not smarter for sure, okay?
Again, a very interesting viewpoint, Ken. But while we're on the subject of being smarter than a rock, let's say for a minute, just for the giggles, that we did claim that we evolved from rocks, which we don't. And if we did evolve from rocks and we were able to trace back and find that rock would still be more intelligent than you, Kent.
They knew how to build the pyramid. We can't build that thing today.
Your world just becomes fantastically complicated when you don't believe in evolution.
I don't believe in it. My world's fine.
Well, isn't that nice for you? So the 12 counts of tax evasion, and the 45 counts of structuring financial transactions to evade reporting requirements, for which you were sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Was that fine? Also, you were convicted of criminal contempt for interfering with the sale of property that you were ordered to forfeit as part of your tax conviction. Was that also fine? And don't worry, I'm not going to mention your convictions for domestic abuse because that would be uncalled for. You know, like when you make videos about me and all you do is mock my very stylish appearance.
I think it's wonderful. What do you mean? World becomes complicated. You guys are the ones that make it complicated. You make up these stupid charts with everything evolving from an amoeba to all the different creatures today. This is complicated. Do you really think Bill or Dan? Do you think the whale and the sunflower are related?
Right, so maybe that's why you deny evolution as a fact, because you're just not smart enough to understand it. Because you're right, it can be quite complicated, but something being complicated doesn't mean that it defaults to being fake.
What part of believing that we descended from apes makes our worldview less complicated?
Well, where do you want me to start, Matt? Descending from apes is a natural process.
Descending from apes is a good way to say it, by the way, Dan. Descending. They're smarter than we are. Apes know what to look for in a partner. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, the apes always have baby apes. No exceptions. We didn't descend from apes. We're not related to apes.
Humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor that lived around 6 to 8 million years ago, and chimpanzees are apes, Kent. Now, since then, both lineages have evolved and accumulated genetic changes, but the foundation of our genetic makeup remains very similar. In fact, humans and chimpanzees share a remarkable 98.8% similarity in their DNA, which makes them our closest living relatives. Facts will always be facts. They don't need to be accepted for them to still be facts.
Physical fossil evidence rather than a story.
Wait a minute. physical fossil evidence. Dan, are you claiming you've got fossil evidence of evolution?
But why is it such a problem for you that Dan just mentioned fossil evidence? Because you've got fossils on your desk right in front of you now this very second. But I suppose your fossils are special ones that are valid. It's only our fossil evidence that's invalid.
Please show that to me. Every fossil we've ever found is 100% fully formed. Fully formed fish, fully formed monkeys are found, fossilized, all kinds of dinosaurs. Fossils are exactly the same as evidence of anything changing.
Well, no, not always, but they can, and they do. Now, the fossil record shows a clear progression from small multi-toed ancestors like Hyracotherium to the large single-toed horses we know today. All you have to do is look at the fossil record, Kent. But of course, you'll just say that that only proves a common designer because you're a brainwashed moron.
I could go on.
I'm sure you could. You can make up all kinds of stuff, okay?
Yeah, but that... Yeah, but that's the whole point, Kent. We don't need to make things up because there is so much evidence that confirms everything we say. All you've got is one book from 2,000 plus years ago, which isn't even a scientific textbook anyway.
Teaching young ones that they evolved from primates will cause confusion in their lives. It makes certain people feel subhuman.
So making sure that young people are suitably educated using verifiable evidence is gonna confuse them. Now, I know science is hard, but even I can understand it. So, I think the kids will be fine as long as we keep doing what we've always done.
When you tell them that they're nothing more than an evolved rat, but telling a child that God loves them and that they were created in His image.
Right, okay, so let's explore that then. So we've got a young child and we're trying to explain to them how we came to be what we are today. And you think it's a safer option to tell them that there's this magical guy that nobody's ever seen, nobody's ever heard, and nobody can prove exists, made them by magic, rather than explaining to them that we evolved over millions of years from other species. I'm not quite as convinced as you are, Kent. I mean, Matt.
Will help them to thrive and to succeed in life.
Yeah, the real world evidence for that doesn't really match with what you're saying here.
The real world evidence that we were created doesn't match?
No, it doesn't, and you know it doesn't, Kent. And I think what Dan was trying to say then is that there is no real-world evidence that supports anything people like you and Matt claim to believe.
I think the real world evidence would say, the real world evidence would say this had to have a designer.
Yeah, because it's a pen. It's a man-made object, you clown. Human beings are not well, they are man-made because... I'm not even going to get into it.
There is no other way it can be explained. There's no naturalistic explanation for an ink pen, Dan.
So because an inanimate object like an ink pen was made by man, that means in your tiny little creationist brain that all of us must have been made by a magical man that nobody has ever seen.
Certainly not a naturalistic explanation for a human cell or a finger or the human body. There's no naturalistic explanation for any of that. Stop dreaming, Dan. You live in a dream world. I want to get to two more major points you made here where you lie to your people, or maybe you just don't know. I'm going to try to I'm going to assume you don't know and you really believe what you're saying, and I'm going to educate you.
Well, you may want to consider getting educated yourself, Kent, before you start trying to educate others, especially given the quality of the information you share.
But if you keep teaching it after tonight, you're a liar.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call irony. Kent Hovind calling somebody a liar. You have got to be joking.
The bone blasted from the Montana sandstone. Fossil hunters, for the first time, have discovered the microscopic soft tissue of a Tyrannosaurus rex.
Kent, even I was able to debunk this claim by finding a clip of Dr. Mary Schweitzer, who was the scientist who discovered this so-called soft tissue in a fossil, and even she said that all creationists are doing is misrepresenting what she claimed. And it baffles me, you in particular bang on and on and on about science isn't that's not science, that's a religion. And yet when you think it helps your side of the argument, you're quite happy to use those same scientific discoveries or pieces of evidence or facts or whatever the hell you want to call them. Kent, you are nothing more than a lying grifter who is only interested in lining his own pockets.
That's longer than you believe for the Earth to have existed, isn't it, Matt?
Correct. The 10,000 years is longer than we believe the Earth existed because the 10,000 years is baloney, Dan. It does not take 10,000 years for things to fossilize or permineralize. Here's the hammer, here's the pickle. Dan, you're teaching something that's simply not true, okay? Stop.
And the fact that people like me and Simon Dan are able to back up every single thing we say in our videos doesn't give you some kind of hint that we may be onto something, but you are just happy to keep believing that a magic man in the clouds did it with just that a magic man in the clouds did it.
It does not take 10,000 years for things to fossilize.
10,000 is the minimum, Kent. Most fossilization takes much longer, often occurring over tens of thousands to millions of years. Which is why you hate the fossil record so much, because that doesn't fit in with your imaginary view on how old the Earth is.
Oh, what happened here? There we go. Okay. How do I get... There's my mouse.
Because we find dinosaur blood cells that could not have lasted for millions of years.
And the fact that Matt Powell just said that as if we find it in every single dinosaur fossil we find isn't him trying to misrepresent what actually happened.
If you put some material that's biodegradable inside of an airtight jar, and then put that airtight jar in another airtight jar and in another airtight jar, it doesn't matter how many times you seal something that's bioorganic. It's still going to degrade, it's still going to deteriorate. That's what we know for a fact. Those are laws of science.
Now, I've talked about this in a video before, but essentially the iron in the dinosaur's body prevented that tissue from decaying in a
It prevented that tissue from decaying for 70 million years, Dan? Oh, tell me another bedtime story.
Moses was tending to his flock when he saw a bush that was on fire, but the bush wasn't burning up. Intrigued, he approached it. Suddenly, God spoke to him from the bush. God told Moses to remove his sandals because he was standing on holy ground. God explained that he had seen the suffering of the Israelites in Egypt and wanted Moses to lead them to freedom. So, do people actually believe this, that there was a bush which was on fire and having a conversation with Moses? And you make fun of us, Ken. Don't forget, we're on a mission to get to 100k subscribers before the end of 2024, so if you've never shared any of my videos before, maybe a good idea to try and start doing that for me now. Please. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow. Love you. Bye.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna happen.
Was it you?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You know what I was talking about. The floater.